This is the story of the goddess of fortune. She was born as an egg that would crack open and reveal to the world everything it ever wanted. And in her wake, she'd leave behind great empires, shattered and destroyed. The Romans called her Fortuna, but other cultures had similar goddesses, the Greek Tyche or the Egyptian goddess of luck named Bastet. They were symbols of hope for better days ahead, but also portents of doom. For no matter how glorious a ruler was at their peak, they knew that Fortuna would eventually turn her wheel away from them. And so they built massive temples to propitiate her, hoping to stay in her good graces for just a little while longer. She first appears in Roman records during the Republic, but stories about her, like all good stories, have a beginning long before that. There are two versions of her birth, one told by the Greeks and the other, her true origin story known only to the Romans. According to the Greeks, she was born when Cronus, the leader of the Titans, castrated his father Uranus and flung his severed genitals into the sea. The blood that mixed with the sea foam gave birth to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, who sprung fully grown from her clamshell throne. But this wasn't her true story. That tale belonged to another goddess, a different goddess of fortune. Her true story began deep in the earth where a race of primordial beings dwelt. They were the forgers of the universe, the ones who took raw materials and shaped them into something magnificent. One day, one of these beings stumbled upon a peculiar egg. It was unlike any egg he'd seen before. Its shell glistened with every color imaginable, and as he turned it over in his hands, strange signs appeared on its surface, each one a prophecy of things to come. Intrigued, he showed the egg to the others, but none knew what to do with it. So he brought it before the chief, the greatest of the forgers. The chief took one look at the egg, and his eyes widened in surprise. He too saw the signs, omens of greatness and destruction, fortunes won and lost, all contained within that one egg. He knew that if left alone, the egg would hatch on its own and bring about whatever fate it held in store. But he was a being of action. He didn't want to wait and see what fortune had in mind. No, he wanted to be the one in control. He took the egg out into the world, a world he helped create but had never seen for himself. He wanted to see what would happen if he cracked this cosmic egg open, what kind of future it would release into the world. But as he walked, people stopped what they were doing to stare at him. Their lives, their fates, their fortunes, all of it seemed to hang in the balance. It was terrifying, yet exhilarating. As the people watched, he raised the egg high above his head and brought it down hard onto the anvil of fate. But instead of shattering, the egg split open. A blinding light spilled out, pushing back the darkness of the world. The light coalesced into a woman. Her hair flowed like a waterfall. Her eyes sparkled like stars in her hands. She held a rudder and a cornucopia, symbols of guidance and plenty. And as she stepped out of the egg, the light faded and the world snapped back into focus. The forger had cracked open the egg, but he hadn't destroyed it. Inside the shell, he saw another egg. This one was smaller, darker, and as he turned it over, he saw that it bore no markings, no prophecies, no omens. It was plain and unremarkable. He didn't know it at the time, but that second egg contained nothing, no potential, no possibility, no future. The forger smiled. He might not have been able to destroy fate, but he could still shape it. He set out across the world again, this time chasing after the woman who came from the egg, the goddess of fortune. Wherever she went, the dry earth bloomed into fertility. Barren fields overflowed with grain, and vineyards heavy with grapes carpeted the hillsides. She walked for months, bringing prosperity to all who saw her, until finally she reached the edge of the world. There, on the shore of the endless ocean, she stood for a long time, watching the waves roll in and out. Behind her, the forger approached. He wanted to know where she would go next, what new life she would bring into existence. But she turned around and looked at him. Her eyes, which had twinkled with amusement up until now, were cold and hard as stone. In that moment, the forger understood. The reason there were no markings on the second egg, the reason it was so plain, so ordinary, was because it represented not the future, but the lack of a future, the absence of fate, the void of nothingness. She wasn't just the goddess of fortune, she was also the goddess of misfortune, good. Fortune and bad fortune were two sides of the same coin, light and dark, joy and sorrow, heaven and hell, all of it intertwined in a tapestry of fate, and she was both of them. He didn't realize it at the time, but the prophecy had always been twofold. When the egg of fate was broken, a goddess of fortune would be born, but so would a goddess of misfortune, and the two would forever be linked, their fates entwined, and he had unwittingly unleashed both of them. She reached out and touched his arm, and in that instant his skin hardened into bronze. He stared down at his newly solid limbs and realized what she had done. She had become the first of her worshippers, but also the first of her enemies. With a flick of her wrist, she banished him and all of his kind from the world, hiding them away in the furthest reaches of the earth. Then she turned and walked away, leaving the forger to wander alone in his new-found prison. She walked for so long that the earth began to tremble and the sky itself cracked open. Storms raged across the land, lightning splitting the heavens, thunder shaking the foundations of the world. She stopped when the storms subsided and the skies cleared. In the distance, she saw the ruins of the great city of Albalonga. It was the first of many, but it wouldn't be the last. There she met the humans, the descendants of the Alban king Numitor, who had fled the destruction of their city. They told her of their struggles, of their hopes and dreams, and she listened patiently. When they were finished, she spoke. I am Fortune, and I have come to this world to change it. I will bring prosperity and happiness to those who follow me, but I will also bring ruin and despair. It is up to you, mortals, to decide which path you will walk. The humans looked at each other in confusion. What did she mean? Which path? There were no paths here. There was only the road ahead leading away from the ruined city. So she pressed her hands into the earth and pulled back the fabric of reality. In front of the humans, two roads appeared, one leading into the sunlight, the other fading into twilight. Choose wisely, she said, for your decision will affect not only you, but all of humanity. The humans hesitated, but eventually the bravest of them stepped forward and chose the road into the sunlight, and so began the age of Roman prosperity, the Pax Romana, when Rome would become the master of the Mediterranean. She watched as they grew, as their legions spread across the known world, bringing wealth and power back to the empire. But even in their hour of greatest triumph, she knew that their time was limited. For as long as she'd been walking the earth, she'd seen the rise and fall of civilizations, of entire bloody lines of emperors. She'd seen it all before, and in the end it didn't matter, no matter how powerful they became, no matter how glorious their achievements, it wouldn't last. One day the wheels of fortune would turn against them, just like they had against the Greeks, the Carthaginians, the Persians, and the Egyptians before them. She could feel it in her bones, the coming change, the inevitable decline, the slow rot that was spreading through the heart of the empire. She tried to warn them, but they wouldn't listen. They thought themselves invincible, the masters of the world, chosen by the gods themselves. What did they have to fear? But as the centuries passed, she saw the truth. The sunlight road, the path she and the humans had chosen all those years ago, was slowly fading, becoming more and more like the twilight path, the one they had left behind. As she watched, the light of Rome sputtered and died, plunging the empire into darkness. The barbarians were at the gates and the great city was sacked and burned. She watched as the empire she'd been a part of building for so long crumbled to dust. She watched as the barbarians, the Goths, the Vandals, and the Huns swept across the known world, destroying everything in their path. When there was nothing left, she disappeared, leaving the dying embers of the Roman Empire to their fate. Some say she returned to the primordial void from whence she came. Others say she wandered the earth as a ghost, haunting the ruins of past civilizations, waiting for the next age to begin. But that, my friends, is a story for another time.